the next category are coatings. And coatings are perhaps the more challenging group because there's a lot of choices, there's a lot of different chemistries, a lot of different properties, and how you apply a coating makes a big difference in how the concrete looks or feels. You can have a fantastically high-performing finish that isn't, if it's tough to put on or it isn't put on well, it doesn't look very good. And therefore people might be prone to reject that concrete because of the way it looks, which may be unfair because that same coating put on well could look like it's not even there. So let's run through some of the basic chemistries of coatings. And we'll start with the most popular in the decorative concrete industry, acrylics. In each one of these basic chemistries, there are certainly lots of different brands, there's different versions, and many of the properties are shared across brands, across whether it's water-based or solvent-based. Sometimes there's some differences. But in general, acrylics are very common because they're single component. There's only one bottle, you don't have to mix anything, you don't have to measure anything together. There's water-based versions and solvent-based versions. Sometimes they're called lacquers. They provide a little bit of color enhancement to the concrete, depending on whether it's a solvent-based or a water-based. Solvents tend to pop the color a little bit more than water-based acrylics. They're relatively inexpensive, and the application methods tend to be fairly simple. Wiping on or brushing on, sometimes they're rolled on, but usually it's wiping on or brushing on. They're pretty easy to use. Acrylics are a fairly soft polymer, and that means they will wear over time. They're usually used as a wear maintenance layer on a floor over some other coating. So I'll get to the pros and cons of these in a second. The next type of coating or sealer are epoxies. And certainly there are epoxies that are glues or adhesives, and we're not talking about those. And we're not talking about epoxies made for, say, finishing a wood boat. Okay, these are epoxies made for concrete, and there are 100% solids epoxies. Typically, those are the thicker bar top finishes. There's some solvent-based epoxies and some water-based epoxies, and there are some water-based epoxies that will go down thinner than a piece of paper and provide a fantastic amount of protection. So just because it's epoxy doesn't mean it's going to be thick. It all depends on the chemistry behind it. But epoxies in general are very stain resistant, much more so than acrylics, but they're harder to use because they're always a two-part system. There's a part A and a part B, and depending on the formulation, they have to be mixed together. Some water-based epoxies also require some dilution with water. The general characteristics of acrylics are that each coat can be applied over prior coats without any sort of preparation. They adhere well, but they're soft, so they will scratch easily. They will wear off eventually. They're kind of like a really hard wax. And if you put enough coats on, they do provide some decent protection. Acrylics aren't horrible. That's a judgmental term that you could apply to using an inadequate number of coats of acrylic on, say, a kitchen countertop where the family is very messy and they don't clean up. That's kind of a recipe for disaster, because food or grease that's left on the concrete is just going to soak right through areas that might have worn through. Epoxies are very chemical resistant. They're quite hard, and they tend to be pretty shiny. Epoxies are usually used under some other finish because they're very prone to scratching. And epoxies mostly, and I'm talking in general, can't be used outside. They tend to be more ultraviolet light sensitive. Acrylics are, the better acrylics on the market can be used outside. So there's an advantage to acrylic. It's easy to maintain, but you do have to do maintenance on it. And if your customers aren't willing to do that, then perhaps you need to be looking at something that doesn't wear off so easily. Epoxies will provide that stain protection where things like mustard really won't ever get to the concrete, and oil won't go through it. We just need to put something over the epoxy to protect it from scratching. That could be an acrylic, but acrylics do wear. What's usually applied over epoxies are urethanes. And like epoxies, there are many different formulations of urethanes There are solvent-based urethanes, there's water-based urethanes. Urethanes as a class offer really good stain protection. Maybe not as much as epoxy, but they're much more scratch resistant. And when they're applied properly, they adhere well. When they're not applied properly, they can peel off. So they do have adhesion issues that you have to be careful about. Urethanes typically are your wear layer. So they're the durable finish on floors that you walk on. And there might have an acrylic or wax on top of those as a maintenance layer so that finish always looks good. Urethanes also have the advantage of being able to be used outside. They're not affected by ultraviolet light, at least again the good ones are. And they come in a variety of sheens. You can find a very low sheen urethane, you can find a high gloss urethane, whereas most epoxies are only gloss. Many acrylics are only gloss or low gloss. And typically the gloss for acrylics comes from just not applying enough. The more coats you apply, the shinier it gets. And the more coats you apply, the better protection you're getting. So it's kind of a trade-off between protection and sheen. With urethanes, the sheen is built into the finish. So if you want a low sheen, not dead matte, but very low sheen finish that stands up to just about anything you can throw at it, then a urethane would be a good choice. There are blends, certainly. Commonly, there are urethane acrylic blends on the market. Urethanes don't like to stick to concrete very well. Acrylics do. So a blend of the two, when it's formulated that way, can kind of get the best of both worlds. So there are some single component finishes on the market that are urethane acrylic blends that bond well to properly prepared concrete and provide decent stain protection. It's a compromise. It's not the best of a multi-step, multi-coating system, but it's easier. So again, you have to weigh what's best for your customer. Something that's easy for you to do or something that gives them long-term performance but might be more challenging for you. That's a decision that you have to weigh.